9/11, I was on the 38th floor of the World Trade Center, the North Tower.
The images of 9/11 are still fresh in my memory.
I remember I was at home and then there was this news flash on TV about a plane crashing into the World Trade Center.
I went to the bathroom while I was washing my hand, and literally at that moment, the whole World Trade Center was like shaking, swaying back and forth.
At first I thought it was how horribly unlucky that was. But then when the second plane hit, I realized that this is not an accident and something quite terrible is going on.
3 months after 9/11, Singapore announced the first wave of the GI arrest.
On Tuesday, September 11, 2001, Al-Qaeda operatives carried out the deadliest terror attacks on America in the country's history, killing nearly 3,000 and injuring thousands more. The complex legacy of the attacks and the ensuing war on terror continues to affect society across the planet, including here in Singapore. 20 years on, we look at the impact of 9/11 on a personal, community and regional level.
I must say that at that time I was very calm. There's no doubt about it. I was not like, scared or whatever. I was very focused, but my muscle was twitching. The tense situation is so tremendous on my body, and it was showing sign. So when I walked down, and at the bottom of the stairwell, there were already police marshalling us to walk towards this overhead pedestrian crossing, and I was really scared at the time because I can hear bang, sound like boom, things like dropping, and I was thinking that the debris was dropping, it's falling down, and later on I realized that the sound was actually it's not debris but people are jumping out of the building, and I realized that, and it was very tremendous sadness.
I couldn't believe that this happened, and the fact that when they announced that the attacks were launched and perpetrated by Muslims, and furthermore in the name of Islam. So this to me was so embarrassing, and it is definitely against the teachings of Islam, and I was quite worried and even very concerned about the effect of such incident to happen in Singapore.
I would say to me it's not an exaggeration that the world kind of changed that day.
Now, 20 years may feel like a long time, but the impact of the decisions after the 9/11 attacks continue to exist within our society and amongst our people, whether we know it or not.
When Al-Qaeda emerged in such a horrific way with the September 11 attacks, and not only that, just a few months after September 11, we had the JI plot in Singapore. And the JI plot in Singapore was essentially an Al-Qaeda JI combined operation, an attempt to mount suicide attacks against Western diplomatic missions and commercial enterprises in Singapore, as well as Singapore government targets. So there were JI arrests at the end of 2001 and also in 2002. So this opened up everybody's eyes to this new threat of violent Islamist extremism, terrorism, which was linked to the likes of JI. So this was a very significant development 20 years ago. 9/11 definitely had a big galvanizing impact on Islamist extremists around the world. Essentially, it was a big symbolic event because from a strategic viewpoint, it didn't result in any territorial gains, but it certainly sent a very strong signal around the world that the US, the major superpower, could be given a very bloody nose. Since then, have certainly had an impact on how all of us live our lives. I mean, if you go traveling now, we have all experienced more stringent airport security checks. It's not so free and easy anymore.
2001 was the year I came back from studying in Egypt. And when I came back, 9/11 happened. Rightly after the GI arrest, I was among those Muslim individuals who were called upon by the authorities to help with the rehabilitation program. It is no doubt that the incident of 9/11 and subsequently the discovery of the GI network has caused Islamophobia to happen, not only in Singapore but in the entire world. And we have seen Islamophobia, for example, in the US and Europe especially. But the ripple effects of 9/11 could also be seen in this part of the world, including in Singapore. As far as I could remember, that Islamophobia happened not after 9/11 in Singapore, but after the GI threat. The GI threat affected Singapore directly, while the Al-Qaeda incident has affected the entire world. We have seen along the years, Muslims in Singapore, they experience a kind of mild discrimination from the other members of the society, but it was not as bad as those Muslims who experience similar sentiments in other parts of the world. But we do not discount the fact that Islamophobia as well as racism, xenophobia, and even anti-religious sentiments become something that could lead to violence. And we have realized as early as 9/11, something that we are still struggling until today.
At that time in my life, the word terrorist was like, need a dictionary for me to define it. You know what I mean? I didn't even really quite understand what a terrorist mean. Even though I did live in Europe and in Paris, I did see what terrorism was, but was still very foreign to me, the feeling. I want to say that it's this evolution of what we think about our community, because I remember distinctly my colleagues at Lehman Brothers. Some of them were dark skin tone, who they are afraid that people think that they are terrorists. In our meetings, they talk about their fear. No, not a lot, but they talk enough that I know that they are scared. And I think that immediately after September 11, the fear is there. There's no doubt about it. Everybody is frightened.
While in many ways the September 11 attacks have changed us forever, society has rallied together in an attempt to move on. And in the process, crucial lessons have been learned.
I think that this is one of the biggest lessons that we have learned 20 years on after the 9/11 incident as well as the GI discovery in our country. That we need to deal with individuals, especially members of the Singaporean community, who possess such thinking, orientation and inclination. And today, I think it is quite obvious that we could notice anti-religious sentiments, for example, through postings on the social media platforms. I think that the way forward for Singapore is to ensure that we step up our efforts and introduce a more effective initiative to deal with the long-term threat. This is where I think the government and the community, especially the religious leaders, need to work hand in hand. They need to work together to continuously engage the community in all these issues. We have always believed in preempting and also preventive initiatives.
If you look at the September 11 attacks, the hijackers were essentially from the Muslim community. So naturally, the law enforcement people, the security services, they would start to look at that particular community with a greater concern, and the security focus would have been more on that community. The thing is, I think many analysts and security services over the 2 decades since September 11, they have realized that profiling needs to be done in a sensitive way, because if you do it wrong, this is exactly what the extremist groups want them to do. This is what the extremist groups want. The message is to the community in question that the government is against you, the wider community is against you, so why don't you join us, right? Fight for your rights. Ultimately, the best defense to me against the spread of extremist ideologies, no matter what ideology, extremist ideology you're talking about, is digital literacy. We have to train ourselves, especially our younger people, how to not take what they see on YouTube or what they receive on WhatsApp or Telegram at face value, but essentially critically evaluate the information, cross-check with other sources. This, I think, is very important, because I would say that misinformation, disinformation, and extremism go together.
For those who survived the attacks, the psychological effects of what happened on September 11 linger.
I was in a war zone. That's what it happened. And it surprised me. Because I thought life is pretty simple. I just go to work, do my thing. I'm an ambitious person. These are my goals. That's all I need to care about. I was very naive. Fast forward to today, the term terrorist may not be this physical experience, but the fundamental concept that someone would want to harm me was like, I'm talking about harming, like want to kill me just because I was working in World Trade Center. I think the takeaway I have is that I'm an ordinary person. I'm a simple human being here. And all I can do is to do my parts. And that's how I think about life. If I can do that just a bit better, that would be good. That's how I'm thinking about how this has changed me.